During a live tech summit, Elon Musk called religion outdated software. The world braced for a war of words. But 3 days later, a silent courier from the Vatican delivered a mysterious package to his door. What it held and what happened next left even Elon speechless. Could this be the moment science and faith finally meet? Before we continue this incredible story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we have another inspiring story you won't want to miss. The early morning light spilled gently across the marble floors of the Apostolic Palace. From the high window of his private study, Pope Leo XIV stood in quiet observation as the sun crested over St. Peter's Square. Just 17 days into his papacy, the former Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost, an American from Chicago, was still adjusting to the vast weight of the white cassock. Yet here, in this still moment, he did what he had done every morning since his years in Peru. He sipped coffee and watched the world wake up. The room was silent save for the soft clink of porcelain. Despite the magnitude of his role, Pope Leo carried himself with a calm humility. Thoughtful, measured, and deeply human. His gaze wandered from the square to the clouds, as if seeking answers not in proclamations, but in patience. A quiet knock interrupted the reverie. "Your Holiness," said Cardinal Dominique Momberti, stepping in with a tablet in hand. "The morning briefing." The Pope nodded. Scrolling headlines passed before him. Wars, climate disasters, rising tensions. Then, one headline stopped him cold. "Elon Musk declares religion obsolete," Momberti said. He compared faith to outdated software running on legacy hardware. It happened just hours ago at the Tech Summit in Austin. Pope Leo set the tablet down. "Prepare a response," he said calmly, turning back toward the sunrise. He paused, eyes thoughtful, but not the one they expect. Behind closed doors, Pope Leo X took a surprising path. Rather than issuing a formal statement or rebuke, he quietly assembled a group of thinkers, scientists from the Vatican Observatory, philosophers from across Europe, and seasoned theologians steeped in both scripture and quantum mechanics. For hours they discussed not retaliation, but reconciliation, not dogma, but dialogue. After 2 days of contemplation and counsel, Pope Leo penned a letter by hand. It wasn't long, but it was personal. He acknowledged Elon Musk's groundbreaking innovations, Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, and then extended a quiet challenge. "Perhaps," he wrote, "we might find common ground in our shared fascination with the cosmos." Enclosed is a collection of scientific research from the Vatican Observatory, work born not in defiance of faith, but because of it. Alongside the letter, he included an elegantly bound book, a compilation of Jesuit-led astrophysical studies dating back over a century, many written in Latin, some in modern code. The package was sent via Vatican diplomatic courier. Days later, Elon Musk was deep in a virtual tour of his latest SpaceX facility when an assistant entered the room. "Sir," she said, "this just arrived." "From the Vatican." Elon raised an eyebrow. He opened the box and froze. For years, Elon Musk had danced on the edge of controversy when it came to religion. Though raised in a loosely spiritual household, he often described himself as agnostic, skeptical of organized belief systems, and vocal about his conviction that science, not faith, would guide humanity's future. His brilliance was undeniable. So was his bluntness. In countless interviews, Elon had dismissed traditional religion as outdated software running on obsolete hardware. He questioned sacred texts, criticized rituals, and once quipped that if God existed, he'd have left better instructions. Admirers celebrated his honesty. Critics saw arrogance. Faith communities, especially older ones like the Catholic Church, regarded his words with caution and sometimes deep offense. That's what made the Vatican's response so unexpected. On the other side of this tension stood Pope Leo XVI, formerly Robert Francis Prevost. At 69, he was no stranger to complexity. Born in Chicago, he had spent decades working in Peru, often navigating between cultures, ideologies, and traditions. He had lived in mountain villages where modern technology barely reached and had held dying hands in rain-soaked clinics. Yet before the collar, he was a mathematician trained in logic, steeped in numbers. He'd once said, "Faith doesn't fear science, it only fears losing love in the pursuit of truth." His leadership wasn't rooted in defensiveness, but in quiet confidence. Where others might argue or condemn, Pope Leo listened first. That, perhaps, was his most powerful trait, his refusal to see difference as a threat. So when Elon Musk tossed verbal sparks into global conversation, many expected the church to react with fire. But Pope Leo responded with open hands and science. The move left commentators stunned. Overnight, headlines shifted from "Tech Titan Slams Religion" to "Vatican Answers with Astrophysics." Inside the Vatican, one advisor whispered to another, "Has the church just disarmed a cultural grenade?" Elon Musk's tweet was brief, but it sent shockwaves through both religious and scientific communities. Interesting move by Pope Leo XIV. Science from an unexpected source. Will respond soon. Within minutes, it was trending worldwide. News anchors, tech bloggers, and Vatican analysts scrambled to decipher the subtext. Was Elon mocking the church again? Or was there something deeper beneath the surface? For days, the media speculated. Late-night hosts cracked jokes. Commentators debated whether the Vatican had softened or Elon had shifted. Yet neither side took the bait. No press releases, no rebuttals, just silence and anticipation. Behind the scenes, something remarkable was unfolding. Vatican officials quietly reached out to Elon's team. The invitation wasn't to St. Peter's Basilica or an ornate audience hall. It was to the Vatican Observatory, specifically the Castel Gandolfo site, a serene scientific facility nestled in the Alban Hills. It was here that Jesuit astronomers had studied the stars for over a century, their work bridging faith and physics. Elon accepted without hesitation. The Vatican's approach had intrigued him. No condemnation, no dogma, just a book of research and an invitation to talk. For a man driven by curiosity, it was irresistible. As the date neared, speculation only grew. Was Elon preparing a counter-argument? Would he challenge the Pope publicly? Was this a media stunt or a genuine dialogue? Early one morning, a sleek black Tesla pulled through the gates of the observatory. Paparazzi stationed miles away caught glimpses of Elon stepping out, clad in a dark suit, no tie, and a look of quiet focus. With him was a small entourage, advisors, security, and his youngest son, X, who trailed behind holding a small telescope Elon had gifted him years earlier. Inside, Vatican astronomers welcomed them warmly. No cameras were allowed past the entrance, no reporters permitted within earshot. Just a conversation, long overdue and highly anticipated. Over the next few hours, Elon toured the observatory. He studied historical star charts. He examined state-of-the-art solar telescopes and asked detailed questions about planetary mapping. To his surprise, the scientists didn't quote scripture, they quoted data. When Elon remarked, "I expected more incense and less infrared," the lead astronomer chuckled and replied, "The heavens declare the glory, but we still need to calculate velocity." Tension gave way to curiosity. Later, over espresso and modest Italian pastries, the real conversation began. Sitting with Brother Guy Consolmagno, the director of the observatory, Elon listened as the Jesuit explained how his faith had always coexisted with scientific rigor. "Belief isn't a block to discovery," he said. "It's the reason I look up at all." Elon leaned back, arms crossed, but listening closely. "You really don't feel constrained by doctrine?" he asked. "You don't filter your data through belief?" "We follow where evidence leads," Brother Guy replied. "But we also ask what it means." That struck Elon. He had often been accused of chasing progress without asking if it should be pursued. That day, the challenge wasn't theological, it was philosophical. Could science and spirituality actually seek the same truths through different questions? Meanwhile, outside the observatory, journalists fumed. Hours passed with no updates. Rumors spread. Did Elon storm out? Was there tension, a statement, a deal? Then, a single photo emerged. Elon Musk, standing beside Brother Guy, both looking through a telescope aimed at a distant constellation. The caption was simple: "Shared skies." That night, news outlets around the world ran the image. Headlines speculated about a potential shift. Had the Pope converted Elon? Had Elon converted the Church? But inside the Vatican, Pope Leo XIV merely smiled when handed the image. "They expected confrontation," he said softly. "They got conversation." The private door to the observatory's inner lounge opened, and Pope Leo the Count stepped in, quietly, wearing a simple white cassock. Elon stood as a gesture of respect. No flash bulbs, no microphones, just two men at the edge of influence, seated across from each other as the world watched in silence from the outside. After a few moments of pleasantries, the Pope asked, "Do you believe technology is always moral?" Elon hesitated. "Technology is neutral," he said. "It reflects the intent of its maker." "But intent is shaped by belief," Pope Leo replied. "And belief, whether acknowledged or not, shapes the world." That quiet line pierced through Elon's confidence. For years he'd lived by utility, efficiency, vision, scale. Morality wasn't ignored, but it was often downstream from progress. Yet here was a man who spoke with calm authority about shaping the future, not with fear or fantasy, but with grounding. They spoke for over an hour. They debated artificial intelligence, not just its capability, but its conscience. Elon laid out his concerns about unchecked AI growth, the potential to outpace human governance, the lack of global ethical standards. The Pope nodded gravely, then said, "We once feared telescopes for how they challenged the Earth's place. But truth does not vanish under scrutiny. It is refined by it." "You're not afraid of AI?" Elon asked, honestly surprised. "I fear the soul we program into it," the Pope answered. "If we shape it without compassion, we create something powerful, but hollow." Elon paused. "I expected dogma," he said, almost under his breath. "I found dialogue." The Pope smiled. "We've survived centuries, not because we resisted the future, but because we asked deeper questions of it. We adapt, not by abandoning truth, but by deepening it." Elon leaned forward. "But what does truth mean? When humanity lives on more than one planet, when time itself bends around a black hole? I mean, do you still preach from a book written for shepherds when we're building cities on Mars?" "That's the heart of the matter," the Pope replied. "The scriptures may have been born in deserts, but they speak of the stars. Genesis begins not with humans, but with light." Elon went quiet. He looked at his hands, then glanced toward the telescope behind them. "Sometimes I wonder," he said, voice lower now, "if I'm helping humanity or just accelerating our extinction." Pope Leo didn't flinch. "Doubt is not weakness. It's an invitation." "To what?" "To consider purpose beyond function, that progress is not the same as fulfillment." There was a long silence. Elon broke it with a question he hadn't expected to ask. Not of a pope, not of anyone. So, what does faith look like in the age of Mars? The Pope looked toward the sky, as if the answer was written there. "It looks like trust, responsibility, and reverence," he said. It looks like asking what kind of people we'll become on other worlds before we build them. At that moment, the conversation had shifted. This was no longer about faith versus science. It was about how both, when honest, asked the same thing. What does it mean to be human? Outside, the media speculated wildly about what was happening behind closed doors. But inside, in a room lit by soft lamps and starlight above, a billionaire and a pontiff weren't debating headlines. They were sharing doubt. And in that shared doubt, something new was forming. An alliance, perhaps. Or maybe just the beginning of a deeper question. The conversation had drifted into quieter waters now, the tension of ideological difference replaced by something deeper, curiosity, and an unexpected sense of safety. Elon leaned back in his chair, gazing for a moment at the ceiling of the observatory's quiet library. He looked less like the world's most provocative innovator and more like a man finally allowing himself to ask the questions that haunted him in silence. "You know," Elon said slowly, "I built companies to solve problems. Energy, transportation, information. I wanted to help civilizations survive, maybe even thrive. But lately I've started to wonder," he hesitated, "what if all this progress lacks purpose?" The Pope's expression didn't change. He simply waited, listening. Not to respond, but to truly understand. "I've always believed that if you push hard enough, innovate fast enough, the answers come. But lately the answers just raise more questions. People trust me with their hopes. But sometimes," Elon exhaled, "sometimes I feel like a conductor on a runaway train. Brilliant technology, maximum speed, no clear destination." Pope Leo's voice was quiet. "Even the stars," he said, "need gravity. Without it, they drift into cold silence." Elon's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "Progress is light," the Pope explained. "But purpose is gravity. It anchors us. It gives shape to the path. Without it, even brilliance can collapse into emptiness." There was a long silence between them. Then Elon spoke again, his voice steadier but raw. "I think I've been afraid to admit that I don't know what I believe. Not really. I know how the universe works, particles, physics, probabilities. But I don't know why it matters that we're even here." "Then you are not far from the beginning of wisdom," the Pope replied. "The most dangerous minds are the ones who stop asking that question." Elon looked up again, this time directly at the Pope. "Why haven't you tried to convert me?" Pope Leo smiled gently. "Because I'm not here to win an argument. I'm here to keep the door open. That's all faith ever really does. It keeps a light on for when someone's ready to come home." That line hit Elon in the chest like a slow-moving wave. He didn't respond immediately. His face softened, more introspective than it had ever been in public. The mask of certainty had lifted. In its place was something far more human. Finally, Elon spoke again, quieter now. "I want to see more," he said. "But no cameras, no tweets, just me." The Pope nodded, understanding immediately. "We'll make the arrangements," he said. "Come not as a guest of the Vatican, but as a seeker." Elon stood, and the two men shook hands. But this time, it wasn't a diplomatic gesture. It was an agreement between two people who, for all their differences, shared something rare, an earnest pursuit of truth. As Elon left the room, no words were exchanged with the waiting staff or the press gathered outside. He simply walked past them, his face unreadable, but his steps slower, more grounded, more deliberate. Behind closed doors, Pope Leo returned to his seat and looked again through the observatory window at the stars. For the first time in many years, he felt the weight of possibility, of dialogue born not from strategy, but sincerity. And somewhere between the silence of the cosmos and the noise of Earth, something had shifted in Elon Musk. Elon walked beside Pope Leo XIV through the inner halls of the Vatican Observatory, their steps echoing against the marble floor. The afternoon light filtered in through narrow windows, casting long shadows between rows of ancient texts and sleek scientific equipment. In the center of the chamber stood a detailed model of a Mars rover, carefully constructed, its robotic arms outstretched, as if reaching for a distant answer. Both men stopped beside it. For a few seconds, neither spoke. The Pope gently placed a hand on the rover's chassis. "You know," he said quietly, "this doesn't frighten me." Elon glanced at him, waiting. "The Church isn't afraid of the future," Pope Leo continued, "only of losing the soul within it." The words landed with the gravity of lived experience. Elon, arms crossed, studied the model like it was something entirely new. Something more than metal and code. He finally nodded. "Maybe," he said, "there's more than one way to explore the unknown." Pope Leo smiled. "One with machines, one with meaning." They stood in silence for a while, contemplating the rover. Elon's gaze wandered to the old star charts lining the walls, the dusty journals kept by Jesuit astronomers who'd mapped the skies long before space telescopes or satellites. "I used to think faith was a detour," he murmured. "Now I wonder if it's just another lens." "It always has been," the Pope replied. "Some use it to escape truth, others to seek it more deeply." Elon slowly exhaled. "The future's coming fast. AI, colonization, synthetic biology. It's accelerating, faster than most people can even process." "That is precisely why the conversation matters now," the Pope said. "Not when things slow down, but when they speed up. Morality must keep pace with progress, or else progress forgets why it exists." From a corner of the room, a senior Vatican scientist quietly entered. He handed Elon a sealed envelope. Modest in size but marked with both the Vatican seal and a discreet logo from SpaceX. Elon raised an eyebrow. "Consider it a beginning," the Pope said. "A quiet collaboration, no press releases, just minds reaching across worlds." Inside the envelope was a proposal, a joint initiative between the Vatican Observatory and SpaceX, an orbiting telescope designed to search for exoplanets capable of supporting life. Science and faith, asking the same question from different sides. Are we alone? Elon didn't speak. He just looked at the envelope for a long moment. Then, with unexpected gentleness, he slipped it into his coat. As they left the room, the Pope placed a hand briefly on Elon's shoulder. "Keep building," he said, "but never forget the builders." Elon gave a quiet nod, the same man, but not the same soul. It was a warm Sunday in May when Elon Musk quietly stepped into the back of St. Peter's Square. Dressed in a simple black jacket, sunglasses, and a baseball cap pulled low, he blended into the sea of tourists, pilgrims, and locals gathered for the Pope's weekly Angelus blessing. Thousands stood in silence as Pope Leo XIV appeared at the window above the square, his white robes catching the breeze. He spoke with calm authority, reflecting on the nature of innovation, not as disruption alone, but as renewal that serves human dignity. Though he never mentioned Elon by name, those listening closely sensed the undertone. The message was for all, but it had clearly been shaped by a recent encounter. As the Pope concluded his blessing, the crowd began to shift. Pilgrims moved toward the barricades. Vatican security subtly adjusted their formation. But one path remained open. Pope Leo descended the steps, as was his custom, greeting individuals personally, one by one. Elon waited, hesitating for only a moment before stepping forward. The two men locked eyes. Without cameras flashing or microphones recording, the tech titan and the spiritual leader shook hands. "Thank you for the conversation," Elon said softly. Pope Leo smiled, his voice equally low. "May it continue." The future needs both builders and believers. It was not a headline moment. it was a human one. Nearby tourists assumed it was a respectful visitor. A few Vatican insiders exchanged knowing glances, but no one interrupted. No statements were made, just two men, radically different, deeply similar, meeting in a moment of quiet respect. By evening, whispers of the exchange had made their way through Vatican halls. One cardinal confirmed privately what many had guessed. Correspondence between Elon Musk and Pope Leo XIV was ongoing, private, and meaningful. No press conferences were planned. But something had begun, and that something, unseen, unfolding, was already reshaping how faith and science viewed each other. This inspiring story wasn't about proving who was right. It wasn't about doctrine or debate. It was about something deeper, something quieter, a willingness to listen, a courage to reach across divides not with weapons, but with words. In an age of loud arguments and endless noise, two men chose dialogue instead of division. Elon Musk, once known for mocking the very idea of faith, found himself face to face with something he hadn't expected: reverence wrapped in reason, science held by humility. He didn't leave the Vatican with a conversion, but with a question. And sometimes that's more powerful than an answer. His voice would later echo through a podcast: "I used to think religion was obsolete. Now I wonder if I just hadn't updated my view." That line traveled far, farther than his rockets perhaps, because it reminded the world that changing your mind isn't weakness. It's growth. If this inspiring story moved you, share it. Let someone else remember that even in the most unlikely places, grace can still speak. That even in our fiercest moments, respect can still rise. Let curiosity, not conflict, guide us forward. Because the future isn't just something we build, it's something we build together.